Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we are changing the mental health narrative, bringing hope and solutions. Here's your host, Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist.
Jeffrey Deskovic, Esquire, M.A., is the founder of the Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which has freed 14 wrongfully convicted individuals and helped pass 9 laws. Jeffrey is an advisory board member of the National Coalition Group titled It Could Happen to You. Jeffrey sits on the Global Advisory Council of Restorative Justice International. He is also the co-owner of the Recharge Beyond the Bars re-entry game, which facilitates formerly incarcerated people in reconnecting with friends and family. Jeff's motivation is that he spent 16 years in prison from age 17 to 32 before being exonerated by DNA evidence. A documentary short titled Conviction is a story about his life after exoneration is now available on Amazon Prime. Well, Jeffrey, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on.
It's great to see you face to face, and I'm hoping you can start us off by telling us a little bit about how you got into the work you're doing and what drives your passion for it.
Sure. So I'm an attorney, and I have a nonprofit organization, Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, and our mission is to free people who are in prison for crimes they didn't commit and to work to prevent those injustices from happening in the first place. So far, we've freed 14 people since opening our doors in 2011. And we have helped to pass 3 laws and another 6 as key members of the National Coalition Group. It Could Happen to You. I got into doing this work because I survived wrongful imprisonment myself. I spent 16 years in prison from age 17 to 32 for a murder and rape which I did not commit prior to being exonerated by DNA evidence. So my passion is to free people in the same position I was once in, while preventing what happened to me from happening to others.
So did you say 16 years?
I did.
So the big question I have for someone like you when that happens is, how did you maintain any semblance of hope? How did you maintain your personality as you would have hoped it would be?
Well, definitely belief in God was a big key. Another thing is I didn't focus on the 15 to life sentence that I had. I thought I just had to hold on for a year or two till the next appeal was going to be decided, which I was sure that I was going to win and then regain my freedom. I used to go to the law library and study the law, and that would give me like a sense of empowerment. I would collect articles about other people who were exonerated, so I would use that as motivation. I would study who helped them and what route they took. In addition to that, I knew that nobody was coming to my rescue, that I was going to have to hold it together and try to recruit somebody that I didn't know already. And I hope that they could build the bridge between me and the legal help that I needed. I had read that had happened in other cases. So I didn't have the luxury of losing my mind. So I had to keep fighting off feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, thoughts of giving up, suicidal ideation. And there was another prisoner there named Frank Sterling who was innocent as well. And we used to get together once every 6 weeks, and half the conversation would be about maintaining our morale, and the other half would be a brainstorm session about, what's the next move to make. So Frank was ultimately exonerated by DNA testing after 18 years inside, so he was exonerated a couple of years after me. So my point is that I wasn't just naively believing in someone else's innocence just because I happened to be innocent. And, I had a pen pal in my last year of imprisonment. I had placed an ad looking for a pen pal. I was just desperate for some outside hope, and this pen pal showed up right in the nick of time. And I used to was asking a stranger I didn't know from anywhere, do you think I should just quit? Should I give up? Should I just commit suicide? I'm never going to get out of here. So, he encouraged me to keep going. So all of those things really were factors in surviving my ordeal and maintaining some sanity and maintaining some hope. but definitely I could not have made it without hope.
And so what year did you get out?
2006.
And was it 2019 that you got your law degree?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I wanted to quickly share, I was convicted even though the DNA didn't match me. The conviction was caused by a coerced false confession, prosecutorial misconduct, fraud by the medical examiner, terrible public defender. I did lose 7 appeals. I got turned down for parole largely because I maintained my innocence rather than expressing remorse and taking responsibility. I was exonerated through further DNA through the data bank, which not only affirmed my innocence, but also identified the actual perpetrator whose DNA was only there in the data bank because left free while I was doing time for his crime. He killed the second victim 3.5 years later after killing the victim in my case.
Which, as you mentioned or in an article that I read about your situation, you mentioned is the real tragedy is that we're hurting innocent people and we're not using our resources properly to catch the actual guilty parties and keep them from, creating more suffering in the world.
Yeah, that is exactly correct. There is an important public safety aspect to it, which is often overlooked. When I was released, I started doing advocacy work. I was speaking. I was a weekly columnist, so I was writing. I was doing new media interviews, so treating privacy for awareness. I was regularly meeting with elected officials. I got a scholarship from Mercy College to finish the bachelor's degree. Didn't get into law school, so I went to grad school and I got a master's degree in criminal justice. My thesis was written on wrongful conviction, cause, and reform. After about 5 years, I received some financial compensation. I used some of it to start the organization. And in the course of that, at some point, I became not satisfied with sitting in the front row of the courtroom. I wanted to be able to sit at the defense table, represent some of the clients, make some of the arguments, hence going to law school and becoming an attorney in pursuit of the dreams of exonerating others as a lawyer.
And what year did you found the foundation?
Back in 2011,
And you said since then you've been instrumental in getting how many people freed?
14.
Are there a number of cases that you're actively working on still?
Yeah, absolutely. One of them's Andre Brown's case. I'm co-counsel with lead attorney Oscar Michelin. He's an advisory board member of the foundation. We did overturn Andre's case, but the district attorney's office has appealed the reversal. So we're waiting for the court to give us a court date and a decision. So that's one case. Alessio De Leon is another from Brooklyn. I mean, his conviction had been overturned. It was one of the cases caused by retired Detective Scarcella, who has had 17 of his cases overturned. But Mr. De Leon went back to trial. He was wrongfully convicted again, and so we're working on. We've appealed the decision, so we're in process of trying to exonerate him. We have Cameron Isaac is another case that we'll be filing his case in court within the next 2 days. So we have a total of 13 cases that we're working on right now to try to exonerate people.
And in your work, in your personal experience and the work you've done, the studies you've done since then, since getting out and working as an advocate, what are you are aware of as the driving forces for why innocent people get caught up in this process?
Prosecutorial misconduct is a factor that runs through many of the cases. Other factors include misidentification, that's caused wrongful conviction in 71% of the DNA proven wrongful convictions. Coerced false confessions have caused wrongful convictions in 29% of the cases. Lying informants, bad lawyering, junk science, forensic fraud, tunnel vision. All these things have contributed to wrongful conviction cases.
So where's the biggest hope? What is it that you see that you hope your foundation and others working for the rights of the innocent, where do you see the biggest potential for positive change?
The Commission on Prosecutor Conduct. So it's an independent oversight board that can investigate allegations of prosecutorial misconduct. So the foundation and a coalition group, it could happen to you, along with many other advocates and organizations. We were able to pass the bill in New York. It was a landmark bill, the first of its kind. We're currently trying to export that to California. And if we pass in California, in general, whenever both New York and California pass law, the rest of the country generally follows. But I think it's important to have some oversight of the prosecutors, and we hope that that will generate some deterrence, that they'll think twice before engaging in misconduct.
So what is the motivation for a prosecutor to get into misconduct? Is it simple? Is it simply just wanting their record to reflect that they won a case?
Yes, it is. But the things that flow from that, I mean, it's if you win a high percentage of your cases, then you can be in line to get a promotion, and with that increased pay on the level of the district attorney. I mean, a lot of times when people and district attorneys are running for reelection, they run on their conviction rate. Oh, I got a 99% conviction rate. They might aspire to a higher political office as well. I think tunnel vision can play a factor, which is when in the mind, when you form a conclusion and then you work backwards and you just ignore evidence that is contrary to that conclusion and just accept evidence that confirms it. I think that all those things are factors.
And so on the other side, there's the oversight. And the other thing that comes to my mind is the idea of a more robust education for prosecutors about what is prosecutorial malfeasance and what is proper. And is there a movement underway to help educate prosecutors about what they can do to stay safe and keep everybody safe, both the innocent people and the community?
Yes, there are. In brief, there are training sessions that are held in front of district attorney associations and district attorney groups, and then also, their causes of wrongful conviction are known, and I think that some prosecutors learn what causes wrongful convictions, and they get an idea of like what the red flags are, that a confession may be false, or that an informant may be mistaken, or excuse me, that an eyewitness may be mistaken, or that an informant might be lying. We need prosecutors to know what the causes are, to have a working knowledge of that, and to evaluate cases that are brought to them, to have a step back approach and kind of analyze things, as opposed to just prosecuting everything that's brought to them automatically.
So there you have that on the side of trying to right the wrong that you were caught up in. On a more personal note, what was most beneficial for you after you got out in terms of helping you build yourself back up and move from this position, whatever, I don't presume to know what your mental state was while you were in prison, but to move from there to the position where you can be in school and pursue your own law degree and start your own foundation? What were some of the most powerful, helpful things for you personally in that process?
I think when I received some financial compensation, that was a big tool in terms of trying to rebuild my life. I mean, it was really a struggle before that. I was always passed over for gainful employment, and it seemed like all the managers, or people, decision makers, they wanted somebody that had experience, that could hit the job running, rather than having patients for on the job training. So when I was compensated, I mean, at least at that point, I had the financial pressure taken off me. I knew I would be able to cover my bills that way. I mean, that was a big factor. Certainly seeing, I used to see mental health professionals 4 times a week. I did that for 6 years. That helped me deal with the psychological after effect. Learning the technology. When I was released, the world was changed. I mean, GPS, cell phones, internet hadn't been created. Culture was different. Cities and towns looked different. So cumulatively, those three things made me feel like I was in a parallel world. So I think the more I learned technology, the more tied in I felt. The more time passed by, that helped also. And I rebuilt relations with my extended and immediate family. The majority of whom had never come to visit me, or the ones that did, very sporadic. So I think rebuilding that was a factor as well.
And did you mention in the middle of that 4 times a week seeing a mental health professional?
I did mention that. Yeah, I did that for 6 years. Yeah, it was, it's very difficult to overcome a traumatic experience like that, particularly one that lasted for 16 years, and then that span from age 17 to 32. Those are developmental years. And beyond dealing with the typical mental health fallout, PTSD, panic attacks, anxiety, feeling of processing things at a slower speed, feeling of having been frozen in time. Aside from that, I feel like I had particular challenges that made things difficult. I mean, I had never lived alone before. I'd never had a driver's license. I never went shopping. I never wrote a check. I never had to balance a budget. So all those things made things particularly difficult for me.
Yeah, so the learning curve was very steep for you in a lot of areas.
Correct.
And then, as you mentioned, if you've got these mental health challenges like anxiety issues and the effects of past trauma that well up or can get triggered from time to time, what was your experience of the most useful either techniques or approaches that you learned of as you were going to therapy 4 times a week for 6 years?
Um, EMDR, so eye movement desensitization. So, you sit there and you recall, the therapist helps you to recall a time when you overreacted, and then you trace that back all the way to what was the original traumatic event. And at that point, there's a light that goes back and forward, and you follow the light. You don't move your head, and you recall things. And so the end result of everything is that you still have the memory, but you have a lot of the energy, the emotion removed from it. So the idea is that, in the future, when things trigger a memory, you don't have all the emotion. And that's why, I mean, when somebody overreacts to PTSD, you're reacting really. So that means something happened that triggers a memory. So you're reacting to what happened in the memory and not reacting to what just took place. And your reaction could be disproportionate. So I would get startled, for example. Let me get a little bit more concrete here. I would get startled if I hear a unexpected loud noise. I might get jumpy, and what happened? What's going on? What's because normally if there's some kind of loud, unexpected noise in a prison, that means that there's an act of violence that's occurring. So when I did that, when I did the therapy, then I found that when I do hear unexpected loud noises, yeah, I might turn to see what's going on, but I don't have this
You don't
alarmed
stay as,
panic, and yeah,
you don't stay in that agitated state anywhere near as long.
correct. Yes.
Yeah, I keep thinking as I'm speaking with you of the book Lessons in Life from Death Row, where Roger McGowan was on a death row in Texas for 20 some years. Are you familiar with that story?
No, I'm not, but I'm definitely going to look it up after this interview. I haven't read about that one.
The teacher, Pierre Pradervand, became pen pals with him, and Roger was in prison for something he didn't do, and they knew he didn't do it, but you know how that system goes. And
I do.
so eventually they got him off of death row, but at last I heard he was still in prison in Texas, but he chose to learn for himself and then learn and teach others what helps us be resilient in difficult situations. So he became a spiritual teacher rather than a bitter, resentful individual. And the book, Lessons in Life from Death Row, was written by Pierre Pradervand, and it contains letters that went back and forth between him and Roger. And so it just brings to mind how rare, and I think I count you in this, rare people like yourself go through these difficult situations, and for whatever reason, you're able to choose, rather than just to get completely swamped by the anger and bitterness, to turn your energies toward the hopeful side to help yourself and help others. And I just have to thank you for that. I would imagine you're familiar with the book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for
Mankind's
Meaning.
Meaning. Yes, I am. I read that book while I was in prison, and that was an important book for me. And one thing is that I never lost track of my humanity while I was in prison. So I understood the prison mores and survival tactics, but I never internalized those values, on my own. And the mind does a lot of things in order to try to help you cope and try to help you survive. So it kind of gives me a good springboard to share with you. When I would play basketball or play chess or play ping pong, you know, I would pretend like if I was a professional player, and so were the other people around me, but it wasn't really like kids fooling around on the playground. I mean, it was more that my mind needed to leave the prison for a couple hours, and that's the delusion that it came up with. My first week home, I was angry or bitter, but I felt like it was destroying me. And I realized, I want to enjoy my life as much as I can, and I can't do that while simultaneously being angry and bitter. I've lost so much already as is. Why would I want to, in effect, lose the rest of my life? And then also, it's not like if I was angry or bitter that I would be somehow impacting the people that had a hand in what happened to me. I would really be the only loser in that scenario. And the vehicle that allows me to actualize that is that I take the energy that I feel and I channel it into the advocacy work that I do. And I do make sense of my life in a kaleidoscopic type of way. I know that I'm doing the work that I'm supposed to do in the world. That's how I make sense of everything. And with that, I have a sense of inner peace.
Wonderful. Well, if people want to support you, you've got the foundation, and it's up here on the screen for people. How do you encourage them to reach out to you or get in touch?
So they can email me through the website, www.deskovic, deskovic.org. There is a web form on that page, so people can email me that way. But we're also on social media. We're on Instagram, Deskovic Foundation. I'm on LinkedIn, also on Facebook, Jeffrey Deskovic. The foundation's on Facebook as well, so people can email me through any of those. They can message me rather through any of those social media platforms. My dream is to have a chapter of the foundation in each state and ultimately in each country. I really see this as a worldwide issue, and countries where we are not hearing about wrongful conviction. It's not that the injustices aren't happening. It's just that nobody's digging, nobody's looking, nobody's being exonerated. But that'll all be when we get the public financial support to do that. I mean, my dream is, what if there were 25,000 people who were willing to sacrifice $3 to $5 a month on a recurring monthly basis? That would give us close to $1 million, and we would be able to work on additional cases. So our bandwidth would be increased because we'd be able to hire additional, attorneys, paralegals, investigators, other essential personnel. I mean, right now we do have 13 active cases, but we have another 5 that are approved but are just waiting. We are averaging between 10 to 20 new requests per month, but we're not able to process any additional cases. We're really at our limit at this point, and so I do hope that people can, will reach out. I mean, that's such a small amount of money, $3 to $5, but yet if many people did that, it would make a big difference. Maybe some of the audience members, or maybe they have the ear of people who have capacity, and just put us on their radar, ask them to check us out. My biggest challenge as somebody who founded a nonprofit organization is, I kind of went from worst to first somewhat artificially through the lawsuit, as opposed to making it in business 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Now I have a cachet of people I can turn, back to. So really I need third parties who are able to reach people in their network and just connect me with them. And I just want to be able to have a short conversation. Here's who I am. Here's my credentials. Here's what the organization's track record is. Here's what we could do if we were able to raise the funds we need. Here are the metrics we could be measured by. Is this something that, appeals to you? And just be appreciative of people's time, no matter which way they come out.
Excellent. Excellent. So exposure is critical, and you're already getting more referrals for people who need your services than you have the bandwidth to help.
Correct.
One of the questions I was going to ask is, where do you get your referrals of people who feel they've been wrongfully imprisoned? And apparently there's no shortage of those. So
there is no shortage of that, but I'll share with you the answer anyway.
All right.
So I'm somewhat of a legend in the New York State prison system. That's one thing. And then whenever I do media or even new media interviews, friends, family, advocates of people who allege they're wrongfully imprisoned, I mean, we should usually see like a spike in requests for help that way.
All right. So it's Deskovic Foundation. Is it .org or .com?
So it's Deskovic Foundation .org. It's they can even just type in Deskovic.org, and then the website, our website will come up. I want to just share that I'm home, I'm free. This isn't really about me anymore. This is really just about the men and women that I metaphorically left behind. So 100% of whatever is contributed definitely will go for the cause of freeing people. None of it will end up into my pocket under any line of reasoning. I'm fine. I have whatever I receive by way of compensation. I have it invested conservatively, so it pays a certain amount of money per month, which I treat as a salary, and that allows me to focus my time full time on doing the work. It's just we need to hire additional people so we can increase our capacity, and with that comes hence the need of raising funds.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that you're out there, that you've chosen that path of hope and positivity, and I encourage you to keep me posted if you end up writing a book about this, or you've got another promotional situation coming up. People can find you on social media and at deskovic.org. And I'm just thrilled that you chose the path you did and that you're doing the positive work you are with it.
Thank you very much. Your words mean a lot. I definitely will reach out. We have other things coming on. And last point I'll make is, if people have enjoyed the interview and you'd like to hear a little bit more about my story, there is a documentary short out on Amazon Prime. It's called Conviction. There's a couple of works there by that name. Obviously, the one pertaining to me will have my picture on it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me on. I've enjoyed it. God bless.
Jeffrey Deskovic, Esquire, M.A., is the founder of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which has freed 14 wrongfully convicted individuals and helped pass 9 laws. Jeffrey is an advisory board member of the National Coalition Group titled It Could Happen to You. Jeffrey sits on the Global Advisory Council of Restorative Justice International. He is also the co-owner of the Recharge Beyond the Bars re-entry game, which facilitates formerly incarcerated people in reconnecting with friends and family. Jeff's motivation is that he spent 16 years in prison from age 17 to 32 before being exonerated by DNA evidence. A documentary short titled Conviction is a story about his life after exoneration is now available on Amazon Prime.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.